And welcome to Weather and Ag in Focus on this Monday, August 4th, 1:07 in the afternoon. Temperatures out there generally in the 60s to near 70. A lot of clouds around and a little bit of light rain east of the valley, generally north of DL up through Crookston, and that's moving northward. We could see additional showers developing here as we head through the late afternoon, evening hours, but don't look for a whole lot. I'm Chief Meteorologist Dean Wysocki, along with our Ag Director, Bridgette Readel. And how much rain did you guys get in your neck of the woods there, Bridgette?
About a quarter inch overnight. And
Okay.
I know that there's plenty of folks that are thinking, okay, that was lovely, but we're really struggling to get some haying finished right now, and we'd love some sunshine to get this crop to turn, because we've got a lot of grain out there that's kind of on that bubble, but it hasn't really hit full maturity yet.
Yeah, we're not going to see a lot of sunshine to start off the week, and we've got more rain in the forecast, so it's going to be kind of a wet week around here with most of these storms coming in the overnight hours. Again, today we'll top out in the mid-70s. Still a few more scattered showers could redevelop as we head late in the afternoon. And then that'll continue overnight with mid-60s. Not looking for a lot of precip out of this first round later tonight. But then Tuesday we should be dry most of the day with mainly cloudy skies. It will turn breezier, though. Winds will ramp up out of the south-southeast, 15 to 25 and gusting to 30 with highs in the upper 70s. And then a good chance for storms Tuesday night. Some of those could be on the strong side, as severe weather is expected to develop out in the western and central part of the state and move eastward. And then Wednesday and Thursday, daytime hours both look dry, with temperatures warming up into the mid-80s on Wednesday, close to 90 on Thursday. And then another couple of round of storms Thursday night and Friday night, and both of those could be on the severe side. I'd say, depending on how these severe storms line up, we could be, in terms of moisture content, we could be looking at about another 1 to 2 inches before the week is done. That's the way it looks right now.
That could be a lot.
Yeah. Yep.
Maybe more so than we wanted to see right now. But I get it. This is Mother Nature. We don't get a say.
I wish we could. But yeah, you're right. We don't.
She didn't call. So, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, it was funny because during the rain yesterday, I've got Bentley in town, and he's like, "Hey, Dad." I said, "What?" He's like, "Mother Nature must have had a big breakup because it was raining all day yesterday." I said, "Well, I've never heard of that one before."
Not necessarily, but I can see where maybe that's the thought. So, yeah, we're going to need this to kind of turn around a little bit. I know that there's plenty of folks that would really like to progress with some more small grain harvest. And as I mentioned earlier, just haying season in general, when you've got swaths laying down and we continue to get this moisture and it doesn't really want to dry out, that's not a great spot to be in. And when you bale hay too wet, there's always the possibility that it can combust and create its own fire. We've already seen some hay fires this year where something was a little too warm and that'll burn up a hay pile. If they're in a hay shed, it can take the whole building down. So we definitely want to avoid that.
Okay, so explain to me, Bridgette, if the bale is wet, how could it combust? How does that happen?
Because you roll up the wet hay,
right,
and it's in the bale, and it's compacted, and it just continues to grow, to get hotter and hotter in there. The heat rises.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And and it'll take off on that straw, that hay, etc.
Okay.
Corn can do that. You can have hot bins, so to speak, if you're not running air vents, or have it dry down before it goes into a bin. We did see some of that. It's probably been 5 or 6 years ago in Nebraska. We had a very late harvest. There was a lot of corn that got binned that was probably on the verge of being too wet. And when you see a bin, when you drive by, and it's literally that gray rusting color all the way to the top, probably means that bin got hot and got burned. Usually doesn't happen on larger bins because you've probably got it on an aeration system, etc. But maybe some of those smaller, older bins, we've seen that happen from time to time. So a lot of stories out there about various ways that even your crop can try to catch fire when you aren't looking.
Yeah, today. Well, and we knew this was going to be a stormy part of the LRC cycle back in March. So unfortunately, it is panning out. I do see drier weather after this stormy part of the cycle goes through after this weekend. I do see a longer stretch of drier weather. So that's good news there. for next week.
Yeah, folks would really like that, especially as we get close to Labor Day. We're going to see a big turn in our soybeans at that point where it's almost like you throw a switch. Labor Day weekend comes and you can see soybeans really drying down, getting ready for harvest. And we want that to be the case because we're nearing that time of year where it is time for harvest, and drier weather would be really awesome for us to get to harvest with. So that'd be great. Now, some of the other things that are going on right now, tariffs, we know that there is a lot of discussion going on. It's a daily event to keep track of who got tariffed, who got delayed, and what's happening. But right now, with tariffs that are scheduled to be dropping at this point, there is a possibility that we are definitely going to have higher food prices as a result. The top 5 imported foods by volume that could face tariffs would include liquors and spirits, baked goods, coffee, fish, and beer, and they account for roughly 21% of total U.S. food imports. I thought baked goods was interesting. I'd never considered how many baked goods we might be getting from other countries. I just felt like most of that was being done domestically, but that's just me.
Even beer. Are they talking about the wheat that is used, or just, I mean, cause
no, if you're bringing in beer that's made out of country and brought in.
Well, yeah. Well, drink domestic.
Because it's, yeah. Which, okay, so that's a double-edged sword, right? Because we say drink domestic. One of the things that, you might come to mind is like InBev owns Anheuser-Busch. So that's actually a European country that owns Budweiser here in the nation. So we're still producing beer here, but in a way, its ownership certainly is not local.
Right.
So if you've ever watched the History Channel's, things that have built America, and they do a food one and specifically about beer, it's very interesting how integrated things like Molson Coors, Anheuser-Busch have been. Familiar names like Schlitz over the years. All of these people that were brewers and what they did to bring those products to market, and then how they've combined over the years. And nonetheless, when it comes to those potential food prices, there's an estimate that the tariff price increases will raise food by about 3.5% in the short run. And once that backs off slightly, they'll still stay probably 2.9% higher after the tariffs settle in.
All right, so open the wallets a little more.
If you look year on year, June to June, from 24 to 25, actually you saw an 11-cent decrease in bread. I was surprised to see that, and anybody who raises wheat is not excited to see that. About 11 cents down in milk. But we saw an 18-cent rise in butter. That's based on per pound. 3 cents on bananas. Orange juice, you saw on a per 16-ounce frozen from concentrate, a 24-cent increase. Coffee, $1.88 per pound. Now, I'm not a coffee drinker. I actually drink tea, so I'd like to think I'm sheltering myself just a little bit from that one. Maybe not enough.
You're safe.
So far, so good. So that's one of the situations that could be just a part of a discussion point when it comes to tariffs and so much more and what's going on right now. Much more to discuss today about those.
And before we go to break, we've got Tom on line 1. Tom's got a question for you, Bridgette. Go ahead, Tom.
Sure, Tom.
Bridgette, can you explain hi, Bridgette. Can you explain to people why silage bales don't catch on fire? Because they're all wrapped up in what else is needed for heat or fire?
Well, you're talking about the air, right?
Yes.
Okay. So if you think about silage Sure. So if you think about silage that can be in bags, and not all silage is in bags. Sometimes silage piles are just packed very, very tightly to keep the air out so they're better preserved. And what Tom's talking about too can be like silage bags where they don't have air inside of them. And when you don't have air to go along with that heat, that combustion, you're not going to have the fire. But like essentially what Tom is indicating is when you talk about hay bales, because they're exposed to air, and even if you were to rip in a bale, you'd get more air in there where the heat's at. And just like you see in a campfire, you'd have more air and you'd have more opportunity for the heat and the fire to take off. How's that, Tom?
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks, Bridgette.
Anytime. Glad to help, and thanks for the call. We're going to have a chance to visit today with a whole different aspect. Our guest today is Madeline Smith. She is the NDSU Pesticide Extension Educator. So for her job, She keeps track of those of us who need to make sure we are licensed, both private or commercial, in the state of North Dakota, our requirements, and so much more of what that means for being able to apply pesticides in the state. Madeline's going to join us because there have been some changes as to how people can get their licensing done, et cetera, and we want to talk through those and any other stories and questions that she may be able to bring to us as well. So looking forward to visiting with her. After this, it's Madeline Smith with NDSU Extension, and then we'll visit more after the American Ag Network Livestock Market Update. Is your technology running smoothly? Well, if it's not, it's time for you to go to techsupport.com, techsupportfarm.com, excuse me, and check out any technology questions you might have. Do their fence check assessment to make sure that things are running right for you so you don't have to worry about being interrupted without a good VPN or MFAs and all those other things that make your life so much smoother. Check it out, techsupport.farm. Then we have with us today our guest from NDSU, that's Madeline Smith. Madeline heads up the pesticide education, certification, all of the things for those of us who have our licensing here in the state of North Dakota. Hi, Madeline. How are you today?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Fabulous. So you're new in your position. Andrew Thossenson retired, and you have the
Mm.
opportunity to introduce yourself to all the farmers who are listening. So please go right ahead.
Yeah, so I've taken over the reins from Andrew, who retired, oh gosh, it would have been last November. And so it's been got dumped straight into the training season, certifying our applicators. As far as my background goes, I've been prior to this, working 5 years as an ag agent up in the northern part of the state, up in Pembina County. So a shout out to everybody in Pembina County up there, and working as an ag and natural resource agent. And then before that, I was with the University of Minnesota for about 7 years as an extension specialist, working mostly with plant diseases in wheat and canola. And then before that, I was in Texas for 3 years, working actually with sugar beets and sugar beet diseases.
I appreciate the whole gamut of crops you have in your background because that leads you to your current role as the extension pesticide education coordinator, etc. So tell us a little bit more about what you're doing in this role today.
Yeah, so our main goal across all the states, really, as far as training and certification goes, is we're trying to help our applicators get education to learn how to apply pesticide products, particularly restricted use pesticides, safely for themselves, the people around them, and the environment in which they're working. And then another part is to really help try and keep the line of communication open as regulations change, when we have label language changes and things like that, trying to help them keep up with that, with all the other things that they have to do as part of their farming operation.
Oh, there's never a dull moment. And so for some in the state of North Dakota, there's a difference between being a private applicator and a commercial applicator. And I'm going to ask you to define the difference between the two of them. And especially because I have more and more farmers who talk to me about buying drones. So then how does having your correct
Sure.
licensing matter when you're buying a drone these days?
Sure. So we get that question a lot about private versus commercial. And so private applicators are applicators who are essentially not doing a fee for service application. So that covers a lot of our farmers and ranchers out there, would be private applicators. As soon as you're receiving a fee for that service, then you fall under the commercial category. So you can apply as a private applicator. You can apply to land that you own, or maybe that your direct employer owns. But once you're getting a direct fee for service, then you fall under the commercial category. Um, and it's interesting that you bring up drones because we have the interest in drones is increasing exponentially across the board, and we get more and more calls every year. And so right now in North Dakota, you have to have a commercial license for utilizing a drone. So you have to take our aerial applicator certification. Um, and it's important if you're utilizing drones and you're kind of new to this to understand that the pesticide certification part is just one small part of all the licenses that you need to be able to do that. So you have to do some things through FAA, the ND Aeronautics Association, and get a license from them. And so there's a lot more pieces sometimes than people realize when they want to apply with drones than just taking our aerial certification.
And Madeline, how do you? And I've run into these people before, and I hate to use the word "these people," but how do you debunk people coming up to you and saying, "Oh, everything we're spraying on our crops, it's going to end up killing us"? How do you rebunk that? Because there's certain people that have their minds absolutely set that it's poison and that's all it is.
So I think it's really important, and I talk a lot about this with our applicators, is a lot of people don't realize that the applicators go through training and education in order to get their licenses to be able to apply. And so they can understand how to do it safely and minimize exposure, like I said, both to themselves, the people around them, and the environment that they're in. And if you follow those instructions that are really important that come on the labels for those products, you're really minimizing any kind of exposure that's going to occur that a lot of people often worry about when it comes to pesticides. And I think it's also important to remember that we use pesticides as part of a whole approach. It's one tool in the toolbox when we think about how we control pests. And there are certain situations where it's going to provide, it's appropriate to use them and they're going to provide the best control. And then sometimes there are other cultural practices and things that we can do that are actually going to help us more effectively. So it's kind of a balancing act, and you have to take a look at the whole situation together. And it's not always a chemical that's going to give you the best result. And so I think, I always encourage our applicators as they're out there to be good advocates and to kind of let people know about the education and the things that they're doing, to kind of allay some of the fears that people have.
Okay.
Oh, Madeline makes great points. I mean, one thing that you can encounter sometimes is folks who are they're not going to change their mind,
No.
right? They're dead set, they have their belief, and you need to establish that early on. What are your concerns? How can I help answer those questions for you? And some folks just won't get there. I think we also have to keep in mind farmers do not spray pesticides just because they can. They're expensive and their costs are going up, particularly
Absolutely.
in light of tariffs that are coming in the next year. And Madeline, I think you can agree, you're starting to see this as well. That cost per acre becomes prohibitive, where folks are thinking, I don't know that I can put more inputs into this crop and then barely break even, not even make money, but break even.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's also situations now, cost is a real thing, but also, managing the resistance issues that we have in some of our weed populations in North Dakota is becoming trickier in a lot of circumstances. So it's become a lot more of a complex decision-making process. And certainly, I think people sometimes don't realize, all the thought that goes into making those decisions, and that, people are not just, like you said, the stuff is not cheap. Sometimes it's not the best option. And they're taking all of those things into account to do the best they can.
Those are great comments. And we have many more to come with Madeline Smith. She is NDSU's Extension Pesticide Coordinator and Education Specialist. We want to talk about getting licenses in the states because there have been some changes as to how you acquire your state and private applicators license. She's going to laugh when I tell you some of the things I did in the past. So we're going to do those, and we've got more to come when we return after bottom of the hour news. And you can reach us here, Weather and Ag in Focus, on the JLA Insurance phone line, 701-293-9000. Dean and I will take your emails, weather or ag at flagfamily.com. And you can watch our live streams, Facebook, YouTube, and Acres TV. Now, if you're looking for advice, especially as we talk about estate planning with farmers, etc., check out ND Estate Services. Mark Wagner would be happy to help you out. ndestateservices.com. And if you're replacing buildings, maybe it's time to put up a new machine shed, see the folks over at Thor Buildings. They will customize what you're looking for based on seasonal weather for your area, and they'll be with you every step of the way in the design. They keep a familiar crew on the project so you don't get lost in the shuffle with subcontractors. So we appreciate the work that Thor Buildings certainly does for our farmers in the region. We have with us our guest today, Madeline Smith. Madeline joins us from NDSU, where she's in charge of the pesticide recertification program. Now, I'll be honest, I've had my commercial applicator's license since college because I took a class at NDSU where I had enough background I could simply go write the test down at the county extension office, got my license. This was probably about 1994, and I've kept it up to date ever since. So every 3 years, you have to go in and recertify, sit through your 8-hour class. Some years I ran out of time to get to the 8-hour class prior to being able to do everything online, and I might have maybe just let my license lapse and then go to a county agent's office and rewrite the test because it was an open book test. And I kind of maybe got caught by your predecessor after I did that twice, and he said, no, you actually have to come to class. So Madeline, can I still do an open book test? Yeah, I'm blowing the whistle on myself. I did it. I would go write the test because I could write a 2-hour test faster than I could sit through an 8-hour class. This is the part where you're going to tell me I can't do that anymore, right?
Well, no, you can still you do the test if you want to do the test. But I know plenty of people who don't want to do the test and would rather come to the research class and sit there for longer. So you still have the choice to do that. But what is going to change in a little bit here is how we do those exams. And so for the longest time we've had open book exams here. So we depending what categories you're doing, you get your manuals and you can study up or not. It usually goes faster if you study up a little bit beforehand before you take that exam, but you can bring those with you and use them in your exam. But in the next year or two, that's going to change. We're going to switch to closed book exams, which I know has a lot of people kind of freaked out about it. But, we're going to do our best on our end to make sure that folks are well prepared for those exams. And they will still be allowed some materials in those exams. So we're not going to leave you high and dry. You're still going to be able to have some of those things with you. But that will be a change. And that's a question that we get asked a lot ever since some of these changes was first on the cards a few years ago is, well, I'm kind of worried about it. So if you're really worried about it and you want to do an open book exam and get certified now, you can sure do that. And then you'll be in the recertification track. Otherwise, it will move to a closed book exam and you have to take the exams when you're new, certifying for the first time. And then you're going to renew every 3 years if you so wish. And you can do that, like you said, through taking the longer certification class, or you can opt to do the exams if you want. But I know how much people hate doing exams.
I don't mind sitting through the class because now I get an opportunity to visit with the other people who are there, because I know you're shocked, Maddie, but I'm chatty when I'm in class, and I like being able to hear what's going on for them and what they are doing in their operations, kind of the things that are happening at the forefront. One of those is over-the-top dicamba treatments now have an open comment period. So are you able to talk about that, about what the open comment period means and what EPA is proposing with dicamba right now?
Sure. So for folks that aren't aware, I mean, I'm sure most folks in the ag world, and especially if you have soybeans, are aware that we got our labels vacated for over-the-top dicamba applications last spring. And so we've been waiting subsequently on EPA to come out with a kind of a new proposed rule for applications. And so they just released that last week. And there's a 30-day public comment period, which I believe ends on August 22nd. You can go on to the EPA website and read through the documentation that they've put up there, and then leave your comments there. And I highly encourage everybody to do that, because sometimes we kind of think they make these rules and things, and they maybe aren't practical in some way, or don't really fit the scope of what products are being used for. And so this public comment period is really key. It's everybody's opportunity to take a look at what they're proposing and really give good feedback on if there are any challenges with things they're proposing, or things that they want them to take a closer look at. Now is the time to get online and submit those comments so that they can be taken into consideration before they release their final rule. And I know it's really relevant to a lot of our producers across North Dakota, so I really highly encourage have discussions. If you're at your morning coffee break or whatever, have discussions, think about it, read through the documentation, and go online and leave your comments, because this is your opportunity to really weigh into that conversation before things are totally finally decided on those types of applications. So it's really crucial that people utilize that comment period.
I think one of the reasons why it's most important to leave their comments is particularly for farmers, because the EPA does look and does weight the comments more heavily than those made by folks from universities or private industry or even the public, because the EPA wants to hear from the actual end user. Does it provide value to you? Do you want to see a continuation of whatever the open comment period might be about? This time it's about dicamba. But I think that's important for folks to realize. As a farmer, your voice truly matters more to the EPA than some other places.
And for those who have kind of been talking about the Endangered Species Act pieces that have been coming down the line, I've sat in many meetings with EPA where they are really trying to absorb and make changes for the better. But that conversation can't happen, and those changes can't happen if they're not provided that critical feedback. So you do have a voice, and it is listened to. So please do go online and leave your comments there, because they really do try as much as they can to absorb those end user comments. It's your chance to really weigh in on the conversation.
So with this over the top comment period, or excuse me, with this comment period being open for dicamba over the top, it's allowing us between now and I believe it's the end of August to send comments in. Do we have an idea how long it would take after that before the EPA would make a decision on whether or not they would allow that label to be approved?
So that's a really good question. In short, I don't know. It takes they get a lot of comments, and it takes a lot of time to go through those and really consider if they need to make changes. Obviously we want it as fast as possible, right? Everybody wants to know for the next season what's going to happen. I would think somewhere towards the end of the year, possibly, but it's really hard to say. And of course, there are a lot of other changes going on at EPA right now that might make it a little challenging to go as fast as we'd like. But hopefully towards the end of the year we would hear something, but it's really hard to say.
That would be ridiculously helpful in all ways, shape, or form. So that would be great. Last comment for you, Madeline, and that was this morning on Twitter, my favorite place to hang out and be snarky me. There was a comment made that, and this was actually made by someone who I'd like to think is educated as a policy writer for ag, said that paraquat and dicamba are the same thing. I just want to reiterate how much they're not. And help me out here. Dicamba is a treatment that we use specifically right now. We can use it in wheat. We talk about it potentially getting its label back for over-the-top treatments in corn, in soybeans and cotton. We've been able to use variations of dicamba in corn. All of these things have been approved and are very safe. Dicamba is a product that if folks are worried about it, it's because of the potential for vapor drift or vapor movement that could injure non-target crops. Paraquat we use in North Dakota very specific because of kochia, and that's generally a closed system. Because of safety, we want to make sure that people don't have contact with it, and so we handle it very differently in order to make sure that we don't have concerns with people getting in contact with that product. Throw me a couple more things there, Madeline. What am I be missing that I need to reply back and make sure people understand they are very different modes of action?
I think you just hit the nail on the head, really. I mean, that they're not the same thing at all, and you have to really be careful about sort of making sweeping assumptions, because there are lots of different chemistries out there that behave differently, that persist differently. And so they're definitely not the same thing. And when you read your labels about how to handle them, I mean, they're very specific in the steps that you need to take in order to handle them appropriately. Um, so yeah, I would just agree with you, Bridget. They're not the same thing at all.
Well, and the reason for me bringing this up is not to be right, but to help you know that that comment is being made out there, and we're going to have
Yeah.
to nip that one in the bud so people understand the difference
Mhm.
between the products. That's going to be important to us
Mhm.
all.
Yep.
Madeline,
Absolutely.
thank you for the time today. If folks would like to reach you, especially if they have questions about their licensing as a commercial or a private applicators, and especially if they're thinking about their drone, what can they do to reach you?
So you can check us out on ndsupesticide.org. We have our webpage there, which whether you're private, commercial, um, thinking about drone application, you can find the information there. And then if you still have questions, absolutely give our state office a call on 701-231-7180. And the gals in our office here are fantastic about helping you work through what categories and what type of certification that you need and any extra pieces that you need to know about. And so they'll get you situated.
They really are good.
Yeah, absolutely. Give them a call. They'll field any kind of question you got.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Madeline, for joining us this afternoon. We appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Now, when we come back, we're going to do a quick recap of the weather. Bridget's got a couple of ag topics to go over. We'll kind of time out these storms for you throughout the rest of the week. All that and more when we come back. And welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus, 1:53 in the afternoon on this fourth day of August, and we're looking at temperatures out there a little cool for this time of the year, 60s to near 70, and we're not going to warm up a whole lot, mid-70s. At least it's dry for most of the area. There is a little bit of light rain north of DL up through about the Crookston area. That's kind of fading away, moving northward, and we'll have temps in, like I said, mid-70s. A few more showers will redevelop as we head towards evening. And then tomorrow, mainly dry, breezy, though. Highs in the 70s to near 80. And then a few rounds of storms this week. One is going to be Tuesday night. Some of those could be strong. Wednesday and Thursday, daytime hours should be okay with warming temperatures, 85 to 90, both Wednesday and Thursday. And then two more rounds of storms, another one coming in Thursday night and another one coming in Friday night before cooler air pours in for the weekend. And those Thursday night and Friday night storms, I'm a little concerned about. Some of those could be on the severe side. And this weather is brought to you by Progressive Ag Risk Management Specialists. So a little rocky this week, Bridgette, but daytime hours dry. I know, like you said earlier, we'd like to see it's kind of we need a little more moisture, but we also need the drier weather as well. And we're going to get the moisture this week, and we'll have the drier weather next week.
I think we're at the moisture. I think we're probably pretty good there. To be honest, there are storm chasers congregating in South Dakota. They anticipate storms Tuesday night through Friday night down there.
Yeah,
there will be a lot of folks.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're right on the northern end of that severe weather, but it's focusing down in South Dakota where, they just got blasted, a week or two ago? That's the last thing they need
we could go last night, a week ago tonight, because it was Tuesday last week that I was coming back from Illinois to Sioux Falls, and that was where I saw a lot of the damage right around Beersford. I know Centerville got hit pretty hard. There was a number of them. So there's been quite a few things that have happened as of late in South Dakota where they've sort of taken a hammer to it. This week is Farm Fest in Redwood Falls, Minnesota. I think they would very much like to avoid heavy rain and wind from taking down tents and displays and so forth and making things just a muddy mess to get there. We know that right now that it's also not only the open comment period for dicamba, but also for USDA's plan to move some of their workforce out of Washington, D.C. So over the last 4 years, USDA's workforce grew by 8%, and the employee salaries increased about 14.5%. There was no plan on how to be paying all these people, I'm afraid. So what is the proposed idea, and there is an open comment period about this on the EPA's website, is to bring USDA closer to the people that it works for. And remember, U.S. Department of Ag is not just farmers and ranchers. SNAP benefits and other programs are administered through the USDA. If we did, in fact, see this hub model, about just over half, 2,600 USDA employees would move to places like Raleigh, North Carolina, Kansas City, Indianapolis, Fort Collins, Colorado, and Salt Lake City, Utah. The cost of living appears to be less in these areas because that area around Washington, D.C. has one of the highest costs of living in the country with a federal salary locality rate of 34%. And it would be far less living in some of these other areas for employees. So we'll see what happens with that if it goes to fruition. To be perfectly honest, I've been part of a corporate structure before where folks have been told, you can continue to work for us, but your paycheck will now be delivered at this new address, let's say like in Utah, and you can decide if you want to live there or not. But your paycheck's still going out there.
Right.
So there will be discussions like that happen. In private business, that's something that happens regularly where people get moved and shuffled around. So I can't tell you I'm for or against it, but I know that is going to be an open comment period as of right now for people to make their thoughts known about it. That's just one thing that's going on with EPA today. We'll talk about more throughout the week.
Yeah, and we've got a press conference from Fargo Police Department coming up here at 2 o'clock on the weekend shootings. Right after that, then, the Jay Thomas Show. So don't go anywhere. That's all coming up next.